I stood at that graveside and I said goodbye. Not the kind of goodbye you say when someone walks out the door and you expect them to come back. Not the kind of goodbye you say at an airport, where you already know the date they'll return. This was the forever kind. The kind that splits your life into two halves, the before and the after. The kind that changes the way your own name sounds when someone says it out loud that I said goodbye to my husband. And I meant it. Because I had no choice. And then yesterday, I was walking down an ordinary street on an ordinary afternoon doing something as simple as carrying groceries, and I stopped breathing because there he was, same walk, same tilt of the head, same way the shoulders moved, same height, same build, same jacket. I don't even know how that's possible, but there it was. And for 3 full seconds my heart forgot everything it had learned about loss. My heart went back. My heart believed. And then the man turned around. And he wasn't him. Of course he wasn't him. He never could have been. And those 3 seconds of believing collapsed into something so heavy I had to hold onto a wall just to keep standing. That moment, that single shattering moment, broke something open in me. Something I thought I had sealed shut. Something I thought I had buried deep enough to protect myself from. And in that breaking open, something unexpected started to rise. Not sadness alone. Not just grief. Something bigger. Something that needed to be spoken. Something that maybe, just maybe, you need to hear today too, because if you are listening to this, I already know something about you. You have loved deeply. You have lost something or someone that changed you at your core. You have said a goodbye that didn't feel real when you said it, but became more real every single morning you woke up and they weren't there. You have learned to carry a weight that nobody else can see. You smile at people who have no idea what you're holding. You function. You move. You breathe. But inside there is a room you keep locked because walking into it feels like it might destroy you. And today I want to talk to you about that room. I want to talk to you about the goodbyes that crack us open. I want to talk about the strange mercy of grief. I want to talk about what it means to truly heal. Not the performance of healing, not the Instagram version, not the timeline that other people hand you, but the real, quiet, sacred work of becoming whole again after loss. Because you deserve that. You deserve to actually heal. Let me take you back to the beginning. The morning of the funeral, I remember thinking, I need to be strong. That was the word everyone kept using. Be strong. Like strength was a costume I could put on. Like if I just squared my shoulders and kept my jaw tight enough, I could make the whole room feel better about the fact that the most important person in my world was gone. And I was strong. In the way that people mean when they say it. I held it together. I accepted the hugs. I nodded at the kind words. I organized the food, I thanked the neighbors, I made sure everyone else felt comfortable. And when the last person left and the door closed and the house went silent, I sat down on the kitchen floor and I didn't move for a very long time because strength as I had been performing it was exhausting. And there is something important I want you to understand right now, something that took me the longest time to learn. Real strength in grief is not the absence of tears. Real strength is not pretending you're fine when you're not. Real strength is not moving on quickly enough to make other people comfortable around you. Real strength in grief is something far quieter, far more radical, and far more powerful than any of that. Real strength is allowing yourself to feel everything without letting everything destroy you. That is the line. That is the razor's edge. And learning to walk it was the most demanding thing I have ever done in my life. That I, in those first weeks after losing him, the world expected me to grieve in a way that made sense. There's an unspoken rulebook people seem to follow. You cry at the funeral. You're sad for a while. You start coming back to yourself. You laugh again. You remember the good times. And eventually you're okay. That's the arc. That's what people want to see. That's what makes other people feel safe. But grief doesn't read that rulebook. Grief comes when it wants. It comes at 2 in the morning when you reach across the bed. It comes on a Tuesday in October when you smell coffee and for 1/2 second everything is normal. It comes at a birthday party, a grocery store, a song on the radio. It comes loudest in the most ordinary moments, because that is where love truly lived. Not in grand gestures but in the ordinary. In the passing of salt at dinner. In the way someone says your name when they're tired. In the sound of their breathing when they're asleep beside you. Those ordinary moments become the unbearable ones. And nobody warns you about that. Nobody says, it won't be the big moments that break you. It'll be the small ones. Nobody tells you that the hardest part of losing someone isn't the day you lose them. It's every single day after, when you have to keep choosing to live in a world that no longer has them in it. But here is what I also want you to hear. And I need you to really listen to this. Every single day that you choose to keep living, you are doing something extraordinary. You may not feel extraordinary. You probably feel like you're just barely surviving. You probably feel like everyone else has it together while you're quietly drowning. You probably feel some days like you're doing okay, and then something small happens and you're right back at the beginning, wondering if you're ever going to be the person you used to be. And the truth is, you're not going to be the person you used to be. I know that's hard to hear. I know that sounds like I'm taking something else from you. But stay with me. Because this is not a wound, this is actually the beginning of the answer. You are not going to be the person you used to be. You're going to become someone new. Someone forged by fire. Someone who knows, at a level most people never reach, what it means to love and to lose and to continue. Someone who carries wisdom in their bones that no book, no class, no life experience of a different kind could have given you. You are being transformed. And transformation is never comfortable. Transformation is never clean. But it is always, always purposeful. Let me tell you something about the people in this world who radiate a certain kind of depth. The ones whose eyes carry something quiet and knowing. The ones whose presence makes you feel safe. The ones who can sit with you in your pain without flinching, without trying to fix you, without needing you to be okay before you are. Have you ever met someone like that? Have you ever wondered what shaped them? It was this. It was the room they locked inside themselves. It was the goodbye they had to say. It was the night they sat on a kitchen floor and didn't move. It was the ordinary Tuesday when grief ambushed them and they survived it. And then they survived the next one. And the next one. Until surviving became something different. Until surviving became something closer to living again. That is what's being built inside of you right now. Even when you can't feel it. Even when it doesn't feel like building, when it only feels like breaking. The breaking and the building are the same process. You cannot separate them. And one day, and I promise you this day comes, you will be sitting across from someone who is where you are right now, and something in you will know exactly what to say. Not because you read it somewhere, but because you lived it. That is the gift grief hides inside itself. Now I want to talk about something that might feel uncomfortable. I want to talk about the guilt. Because in my experience and in the experience of so many people who have loved and lost, grief rarely comes alone. Grief almost always brings a companion. And that companion's name is guilt. Did I do enough? Did I say enough? Did I show them enough? Were there words I left unspoken? Were there moments I wasted being angry, being distracted, being somewhere else when I should have been fully present? Did they know how much I loved them? Did I show it in a way they could actually feel? These questions don't come gently. They come like interrogations at 3 a.m. They come like a voice you can't turn off. And the longer you listen to them, the more they begin to reshape your memory of the relationship itself, stealing the beautiful parts, amplifying the regrets, turning what was real and good and whole into something fractured and incomplete. I want you to stop feeding that voice today. Not because the questions aren't real. Some of them are real. Some of them have truth in them. But here is what is also true. Love is imperfect because people are imperfect. Every single person who has ever loved another human being has said things they regret, has been absent when they should have been present, has taken for granted the ordinary Tuesday, because that is what living inside a life feels like. You cannot love someone for years and be perfect every moment. That is not a failure. That is the human condition. And the person you lost, if they loved you, and I believe they did, they were not tallying your mistakes. They were not measuring your worth by your worst moments. They knew you. The full, complicated, beautiful, imperfect, real you. And they loved that person. Not the perfect version. Not the version without flaws. You.so release the verdict you keep handing down on yourself. You were not a perfect partner, a perfect spouse, a perfect caregiver. But you were present. You were there. You loved. And love, when it's real, doesn't need perfection to count. Let me take a moment to tell you something about that walk yesterday. That walk I took when I saw a stranger who stopped my heart. After the initial wave passed, after I got my breath back and kept walking, I had time to think about what had happened to me in those 3 seconds. And I realized something. My heart hadn't made a mistake. It wasn't confused. It wasn't broken. It was doing exactly what love does. It was reaching. It was reaching across the impossible distance between what is and what was. It was honoring something so real, so deep, so woven into the fabric of who I am that even the shape of a stranger's shoulders could trigger it. That's not weakness. That is the evidence of a love that mattered. And I want you to hear that. Every time grief hits you in an unexpected place. Every time a song brings you to your knees. Every time you smell something and suddenly can't breathe. Every time you turn to tell them something and remember all over again. That is not you being broken. That is the love refusing to disappear. Love doesn't die when a person does. That took me a long time to understand. I used to think grief was the dying of love. I used to think if I could just get past it, if I could just put enough distance between myself and the loss, then maybe the love could go quiet and I could feel normal again. But that's not how it works. Grief is not the enemy of love. Grief is love with nowhere to go. And one of the most healing things you will ever do is find somewhere for it to go. Find somewhere to put that love. Channel it. Give it direction. Use it. Let it change how you treat other people. Let it deepen your compassion. Let it make you braver about telling the people who are still here exactly how much they mean to you. Let it make you more present. Let it make you slower to take ordinary Tuesdays for granted. Because now you know more viscerally than most people ever will, that ordinary Tuesdays are not ordinary at all. They are everything. I want to talk now about something that society rarely gives us permission to discuss. I want to talk about the loneliness of grieving in a world that has moved on. It is an alienating experience. In the beginning, people are around. There are calls and visits and food at the door and people who check in. And that is beautiful. That kindness is real and it matters. But weeks become months. And the world, as it must, continues turning. People go back to their lives. The calls become less frequent. The visits stop. And you are left in what I can only describe as a kind of invisible suffering. Because on the outside, you are beginning to look okay. You are functioning. You are at the grocery store. You are answering emails. You are showing up for the people who need you. But inside, you are still in the middle of something enormous. Something that has no clean end date. Something that continues to require all of you courage just to face each morning. And the terrifying, isolating thing about that is the growing sense that you are supposed to be over it by now. That this should be done. That other people have moved through loss and come out the other side, so what is taking you so long? What is wrong with you? Nothing is wrong with you. Grief has no timeline. It has no rulebook. It has no acceptable endpoint. And if anyone in your life, consciously or unconsciously, is making you feel like you are grieving too long, too hard, too loudly, or not loudly enough, I want you to very gently and very firmly refuse that pressure. You do not owe anyone a performance of recovery. Your healing is yours. The pace of it is yours. The shape of it is yours. And there is no version of grief that is more valid than yours. There is no right way to lose someone you love. There is only your way. And your way is sacred. And your way deserves all the space and time and gentleness in the world. Now I need to say something that might feel like a contradiction after everything I've just said. And I ask you to hold both things at once because both things are true. While you must give yourself time and space and gentleness, you also cannot afford to live in the grief forever. Not because the grief doesn't deserve its full expression. It does. But because you are still here. And being still here is not an accident. You are still breathing, still waking up, still hearing your own heartbeat, and that has meaning. That is not just surviving. That is an invitation. An invitation to what? To become the fullest possible version of the person that love shaped you into. Think about it this way. Everything they gave you, every conversation, every lesson, every moment of laughter, every difficult season you weathered together. Every way they changed you simply by loving you. None of that left when they did. All of it is still inside you. They shaped you. And who you have become because of them, that is still here. That is still alive. That is the part of them that doesn't die. And living fully, really, truly, deeply, joyfully living is how you honor that. Not by shrinking. Not by numbing. Not by going through the motions and calling it survival. But by building a life that feels like a tribute to everything they gave you. By being brave enough to laugh again. By being courageous enough to hope again. By being open enough to let beauty back in. Because beauty is still out there. Joy is still possible. Not the same joy. A different joy colored by experience, weighted by wisdom. More precious because you know now how fragile it is. But it's there. Waiting. And you are not betraying anyone by reaching for it. Let me say that again because I know someone listening needs to hear it directly. You are not betraying your love, your commitment, your grief, or their memory by choosing to be happy again. Joy is not disloyalty. Laughter is not forgetting. Moving forward is not leaving them behind. They come with you. They're woven into who you are. You carry them not as a weight but as a foundation, the bedrock that everything new gets built on. I want to tell you about a woman I know. I won't use her real name. I'll call her Grace because that is the word that best describes what I watched her become. Grace lost her husband suddenly. No warning. A completely ordinary morning that turned into the worst morning of her life in a single phone call. She was 43 years old, with 2 children in high school and a dog and a mortgage and a whole life they had built together over 20 years. And in one phone call, that life as she knew it was over. For a long time after Grace did what she had to do. She was a mother. So she kept moving. She got her children to school. She paid the bills. She held the household together. But everyone around her could see it. The lights were on, but something essential was dimmed. Something that had made Grace Grace was very quiet. A year passed. Then another. And Grace stayed in the motion of daily life without ever actually stepping back into living. It was her daughter, 17 years old, fierce and loving and clear-eyed in the way teenagers sometimes are, who finally said to her, "Mom, I don't think Dad would want this for you." And Grace told me that sentence hit her like a key turning in a lock she hadn't realized was there. Because she knew it was true. She knew it, not as a fact she'd been told, but as a knowing she'd been avoiding. She knew that the man she'd loved for 20 years had been the first one to celebrate her, to push her forward, to demand more for her even when she was ready to settle for less. She knew that if the situation were reversed, if she had been the one to go first, she would have wanted him to live. Fully. Unapologetically. With joy. And she hadn't been giving herself permission to do the same. Not because she didn't know she should, but because it felt like moving on would mean moving away. And she wasn't ready for the distance. What Grace eventually understood, and what I want you to understand, is that healing is not distance. Healing is depth. Healing doesn't take you further from the people you love. Healing takes you deeper into who you are because of them. It is the most intimate tribute you can offer. She started small. She took a walk. A real walk. Not the robotic motion of errands, but a slow, intentional walk where she let herself notice things. The light on the leaves. The sound of someone laughing in a park nearby. The smell of bread from a bakery. Small things. Beautiful things. Things she had walked past unseeing for 2 years. And she told me that on that walk she felt him. Not in a mystical, out-of-body way. In the simplest way. In the warmth of the sun on her face, she felt what she could only describe as permission. An encouragement. A push from someone who had always loved her toward the life she still had the chance to build. That walk changed something. Not everything, not all at once. But something. And that something is available to you too. You don't need a dramatic turning point. You don't need a single revelation. You don't need to feel healed before you start taking steps toward healing. In fact, the steps toward healing are what create the healing. You don't wait until you feel ready. You move, and readiness comes with the movement. So let me ask you something directly. And I want you to sit with this question, not answer it immediately, but really sit with it. What is one small thing you have been denying yourself because it felt disloyal to feel good? What is one joy you have been holding at arm's length because some part of you decided that suffering was the appropriate way to honor what you lost? What is one version of yourself, vibrant, laughing, curious, alive, that you have been quietly putting away? Because I think you know what it is. I think somewhere underneath all the grief and all the survival and all the daily motion, there is a version of you that is waiting. Quietly, patiently waiting. Not asking you to rush. Not asking you to perform. Just asking you to remember that it is still there. And it is. Promise you. Whatever has been buried by loss, your spark, your laughter, your hope, your sense of possibility, it is still there. Grief covers things. It does not erase them. Let me talk about something that I think is one of the most misunderstood parts of this entire journey. And that is the relationship between grief and identity. When you lose someone who is central to your life, a partner, a husband, a wife, a person whose presence shaped your daily existence, you don't just lose them. You lose a version of yourself. You lose the self that was defined, at least in part, by that relationship. The self that was seen through their eyes. The self that had a role, a place, a certainty in the structure of shared life. And that loss of self, the loss of the self that only existed inside that love story, is something people rarely talk about. But it is real. And it is one of the most disorienting parts of the grief. Who are you now? Not who were you before. Not who will you be one day. But right now, in this space between who you were and who you're becoming, who are you? That question, if you let it frighten you, becomes paralyzing. But if you let it open you, it becomes the most important question you have ever been asked. Because you get to answer it. You get to decide. Not from scratch. Everything you've lived and loved and learned is still your foundation. But the next chapter, the next version, is genuinely wide open, terrifyingly and beautifully yours to write. And the person you lost? The person who knew you better than almost anyone? I believe with everything in me that they would want to read that next chapter. I believe they would want it to be rich. I believe they would want it to surprise you. I believe they would want it to include moments of such simple, profound happiness that you stop in the middle of them and think, this is what it feels like to be alive, because they knew what it felt like to be alive. They were alive with you. And they would not want their love to be the thing that kept you from living. Let me talk about the days when none of this feels possible. Because they will come. Even as you grow, even as you heal, even as you begin to find your way back to the light, there will be days when grief lands on you like a physical weight. Days when getting out of bed is genuinely the bravest thing you do. Days when the smallest task feels monumental. Days when something triggers a memory so raw it strips away everything you've built and leaves you feeling like you're right back at the beginning. I need you to know, those days are not signs of failure. Those days are not evidence that you haven't healed enough, grieved enough, or worked hard enough. Those days are simply part of the truth of having loved deeply. And on those days, the only job you have is to be gentle with yourself. Not productive. Not strong in the way the world defines it. Not moving forward. Just gentle. Drink some water. Sit somewhere quiet. Let yourself feel what you feel without judgment. Call someone who doesn't need you to be okay. Cry if you need to cry. Sleep if you need to sleep. Give yourself every grace you would unhesitatingly give to someone else in pain. Because you would, wouldn't you? If a friend came to you on a day like that, broken open, undone, weeping for someone they'd lost, you would hold them. You would tell them it's okay. You would not ask them to perform strength. You would simply be with them. Be with yourself like that. It is one of the most radical, most healing, most loving acts available to you. I want to bring us to something I've been circling toward for this entire journey. Something that I believe after everything, after the goodbye and the grief and the guilt and the survival and the long walk back to yourself, is the deepest truth of what loss ultimately teaches. And it is this. Love is not a risk you take. Love is the only thing that actually lasts. Everything else, the accomplishments, the possessions, the plans, the carefully constructed securities of a life, all of it is temporary. All of it is impermanent. The only thing that transcends time, the only thing that doesn't fully disappear when its container does, is love. The love you gave your husband, that is real. That is permanent. It happened. It existed. It mattered. Nothing can unmake it. The years you shared, the moments you lived inside, the ordinary Tuesdays and the extraordinary ones, they cannot be taken back. They are woven into the fabric of what happened in this world. They are permanent. And the love he gave you, the way he saw you, valued you, chose you, that is also permanent. It shaped you. It is inside you. It will be inside you on the last day of your life as surely as it was on the first day you felt it. Grief is the price of that permanence. And knowing that, really knowing it, changes the way grief feels. Doesn't go away. But it transforms. It becomes something closer to reverence. Something closer to gratitude. Something that, when you hold it at exactly the right angle, looks almost like a gift. Because you were loved. Really deeply, truly loved. In a world where so many people live and die without ever experiencing love the way you experienced it, you had it. You had the real thing. You lived inside something beautiful and rare and profoundly human. And you get to carry that forever. Not as a wound. As a wealth. The richest people in the world are not the ones with the most money. The richest people in the world are the ones who have loved and been loved at the level that breaks you open when it ends. Because they know something. They know what actually matters. They know what life is actually for. You know now. So here is where I want to leave you today. And I want you to hold this close when the hard days come. You said goodbye. Yes, forever goodbye, the hardest kind. And that goodbye lives inside you. But alongside it, woven into the same breath, present in the same heartbeat, is everything that came before it. The hello. The years. The ordinary mornings. The difficult seasons you weathered and came through. The laughter that was so specific it could only have existed between the two of you. The particular way love feels when it's been built over time, layer by careful layer. All of that, you carry both. The goodbye and everything before it. And carrying both is not a burden, it is a privilege. It is the signature of a life fully, bravely, humanly lived. And now you are still here. Still breathing. Still capable of being surprised by beauty in the form of a stranger's walk on an ordinary afternoon. Still capable of stopping in your tracks for love. That is not a sign that you are damaged. That is a sign that you are alive. And life, your life, the one still unfolding in front of you, is asking for your full presence. Not your perfect presence. Not your healed and finished presence. Your real, raw, courageous, still in progress presence. Show up for it. Show up for the small moments. The coffee in the quiet morning. The sound of rain. The unexpected kindness from a stranger. The call from a friend who makes you laugh. The moment something beautiful happens and you catch yourself feeling grateful before grief has a chance to intercept it. Those moments are yours. Take them. Receive them without guilt. Let them be evidence that you are not only surviving, you are healing. You are growing. You are becoming someone who can hold loss and love and life all in the same two hands without dropping any of it. And one day, not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, someone who is right where you are now is going to cross your path. They're going to be in the middle of their own forever goodbye. They're going to be sitting on their own kitchen floor. They're going to be standing on a street, heart stopped because a stranger's walk reminded them of someone they lost. And you are going to know exactly what to say, not because you read it somewhere, not because someone told you, but because you lived it, because you walked through the fire and didn't let it consume you, because you chose day after difficult day to keep going. That is your testimony. That is your purpose. That is the reason love, even the love that has lost its person, is never wasted. You were loved greatly. You loved greatly. You are still here. And that, more than anything, is enough. That is everything.